If you hear my voice, match me. If you hear my voice, match me. If you hear my voice, match me. How's it going, folks? It's Pat from Asphalt Green's Recess Enhancement Program here with another instructional video for you, this time for our game Name and Motion. Before we hop into the game though, as always, we need to start with a safety check because safety is paramount, all right? So before we start but after we end every game, we want to make sure that we and our students are washing our hands for at least 20 seconds. We want to make sure that our hands are at no times going anywhere near our face. If we have to cough or sneeze, we want to, you guessed it, dab right into the elbow. And we also want to make sure that we are standing 6 feet apart from one another at all times so that we are all properly social distanced, okay? Once we've done our safety check, it means we're ready to go. So if we've done that, you feel good, give me 2 thumbs up, and let's get started. So it seems like everyone's ready to go, which means that we can hop into our overview of Name and Motion. And hold up, 1 second. What's the name of the game? Well, it's Pat. It's Name and Motion, of course. So folks, Name and Motion, a great game to play with students of any age and any ability level, all right? So from students in kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade. It's a great game because it can be played in any space. So long as students can form a circle or something akin to a circle and they can stand 6 feet apart from one another, you'll be good to play. And so with that in mind, everyone can stay properly social distanced, which means that the game is safe. And what's great about it too is you don't need to share any equipment because no equipment is needed for it. Again, chalk 1 up for safety there. Then equally as important as safety, of course, is fun. And I'm here to tell you, just as with every other rep game, Name and Motion is a great time. So students will be safe and they'll be having fun. And what more could you ask for, right? But let's get into the details of everything though. And as we always like to do when discussing the details of a rep game, we like to rep it out. So we're going to talk about how we can get ready for Name and Motion. So whenever we're getting ready for any rep game, we always want to make sure that we are mapping out our play area and designating our boundaries, okay? As I mentioned, Name and Motion is a circle game, so you're going to want to be able to have students stand 6 feet apart from one another. So just take a look at your play area and make sure that's possible. If you have to form a different shape, that's okay. So long as it's something like a circle, you're good to go, all right? And you can think about where you want those boundaries to end, and when you're laying out equipment later on, you can put that down and mark those boundaries, okay? Before you do that though, once you've got your play area decided, you want to make sure that you're doing a safety sweep. You want to make sure that you've removed any items that might pose a safety risk to students. And you also want to make sure that you're thinking about how you can work around any items that might not be able to be moved, okay? Once you've finished your safety sweep, you can go back to those boundaries and you can lay down tape or cones to designate those boundaries for students, all right? Then, once you feel confident in your play area, your boundaries are lined up, everything appears safe, you can have your students gather up in a circle, standing 6 feet apart from one another, and you can do that by using the attention grabber that I used at the beginning of the game, all right? Which was match me, so we'll do it again. So, if you can hear my voice, match me. If you can hear my voice, match me. If you can hear my voice, match me. And if you can hear my voice, can we form a circle and stand 6 feet apart from one another within the cones and the tape? So once you have students gathered up in a circle, that means that you're ready to explain, right? So you can begin to explain the instructions for Name and Motion to your students. Now, when explaining a game, we always want to make sure that we're using a loud and clear voice so that all students can hear and understand us. And we also want to make sure that as we're delivering the instructions, that we're asking students specific questions about those instructions, okay? So one of the suggestions for a question that we have for you is, well, what do you do when it's your turn? Right? So that would be a question you can ask. That'll make a little bit more sense as I go through the actual instructions for the game. So while I'm doing that, you can read along on your PDF copy of the instructions, or you can take a look on our website and find them there. So the first rule of Name and Motion is something that you already have students doing, and that is to gather up and stand in a circle, standing 6 feet apart from one another, okay? Once you have all the students gathered up though, you can explain to them that one person will start off the game by saying their name and performing a motion, right? So say I started the game. I would say, pat, hua. What would then happen is that the person to my right would then say my name and then do my motion, okay? So I would say, pat, hua, and then say my friend Steve on my right would say, pat, hua, right? And then the person on Steve's right would then do the same, would say the same name and do the motion, and it would continue on until it got back to me. Then, once it has gotten back to me, I would say my name and do my motion along with everybody else in the group. So we're all doing it at the same time. Everyone would then say pat and do hua, right? Then we move on to the next person, right? And that would be Steve on my right. So Steve would then say my name, do my motion. So we'd say pat, hua. But then he would say his name and do his motion without repeating my motion, okay? So he'd say pat, hua. And then we'd choose a new motion and say, Steve, whoo, right? Then the person on his right would say, pat, hua, Steve, whoo. And then we would continue to do that around the circle until we got back to Steve. And then when we got back to Steve, we would all perform those two motions again and say their names, right? So they would say, pat, hua, Steve, whoo. And then that would continue on around the circle. So say there were 10 people in the circle. It should look like at the very end of the game, people saying 10 names and doing 10 motions associated with those names, okay? And that is name and motion. So that's an explanation of the rules for name and motion. So how about we talk a little bit about how we can play the game so that students are abiding by those rules, and how we can play the game so as to keep students interested in it, okay? Before we can do that though, I think we need to gather up. So if you can hear my voice, match me. If you can hear my voice, match me. If you can hear my voice, match me. And if you can hear my voice, can we gather up and stand 6 feet apart from one another? Brilliant, thank you guys. So one of the first things that we would suggest with name and motion is to remind students to say the name of the person or people behind them and to do their motion before they say their name and do their motion, okay? So say I went and then Steve went. Steve wouldn't just start off with Steve. He would say pat, hua, Steve, right? And you can get students to practice that and to get a little bit more comfortable with it, okay? So on top of that, you also want students to be mixing up their motions, right? Because if it was just pat, huh, Steve, huh, Sally, huh, we're only working out one area of our body, and plus that might get a little bit boring. So you can add in as an extra thing that everyone needs their own unique motion. Now, it can, be kind of similar, but so long as they're different, they'll be good to go, all right? And then something that's always helpful is for you as the facilitator to always say the names and do the motions with the students. It can make things easier for students because they'll have someone to follow along. Plus, it makes it more interesting if you're involved as well. Students are always focused on what the adult is doing and they're watching them, whether you think it or not. So you being engaged in the game would be fantastic for them, okay? And as always, we love to add in any extra activity, okay? So say after every name and motion, maybe you go once around the circle, everybody does 2 jumping jacks, right? Or 2 squats. Or maybe you can be after every name and motion. Once one person goes, they do 2 jumping jacks, okay? Then the next person goes, then 2 jumping jacks. However you want to do it to get more students more active, we're all about it, okay? And if anybody makes a mistake, of course, you can always add a little extra activity there. So that brings us to the end of our list of tips, which means that we're at the end of the rep model and therefore the end of this video, okay? Before we head off though, I think that we need to gather up once more. So if you can hear my voice, can you match me? And if you hear my voice, can you match me? And if you hear my voice, can you match me? If you hear my voice, I just want to say thank you for watching another instructional video from us here at Asphalt Green. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you have lots of fun playing name and motion with your students, all right? Stay tuned for more videos from us on our website, and we'll catch you the next time.